Archiving history. Let's explore.
In the early 18th century, the Atlantic was a vast and unforgiving expanse where men fought for power, wealth, and survival. In the midst of it all, one man's name became a whispered warning among sailors and merchants alike, a figure who commanded attention with nothing but fear in the unknown. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was more than a monster of the sea. He was a symbol of rebellion, a ghost who haunted empires, and in the end he became the most hunted man on the Atlantic. This is the true story of the pirate who brought the world to its knees and vanished into legend. To understand Blackbeard, we must first understand the world he came from. The year was 1701. Europe was gripped by a brutal conflict, the War of Spanish Succession, known in the American colonies as Queen Anne's War. It was a dynastic crisis, triggered by the death of the childless Spanish King Charles II. Rival claims to the Spanish throne pitted England, France, and Spain against one another, with every side determined to control the lucrative trade routes stretching from Europe to the Americas, Africa, and the Caribbean. On the high seas, the great powers turned to privateers, freelance sailors who were granted legal authority, through letters of marque, to attack enemy ships. These privateers blurred the line between patriot and pirate. Among them was a man from Bristol, England, a bustling port city steeped in maritime trade and the Atlantic slave economy. His name was Edward Teach, or Thatch. Unfortunately, very little is known about his early life. It's believed he was born around 1680, though no birth records survived. This obscurity wasn't uncommon. Lower-class children often went unrecorded unless tied to land, wealth, or scandal. And pirates rarely left behind autobiographies. What we do know comes from fragmented accounts. Some sources suggest he was literate, possibly well-read. His correspondence was grammatically sound, and he commanded a ship with tactical precision. This has led most to believe he received at least a basic education, perhaps in Bristol or through naval training during his early years at sea. In 1702, with the war raging, Teach likely joined the British Royal Navy or signed on as a privateer. For over a decade, he sailed the Atlantic, capturing enemy vessels and growing comfortable with violence and command. But then peace came. In 1713, the Treaty of Utrecht ended the War of Spanish Succession. England emerged with expanded territories and access to new trade ports. With the war over, thousands of privateers like Teach were abandoned by the state, unpaid, unemployed, and floating in port cities filled with desperation. The world that once rewarded their plunder no longer needed them, so they became pirates. After the war, the Caribbean filled with out-of-work privateers. One of them, Benjamin Hornigold, had turned to piracy, launching raids from New Providence, a haven for outlaws. It was there that Edward Teach joined his crew. Hornigold was smart, calculating, and respected. Teach rose quickly through the ranks, proving himself bold and capable. By 1716, he was given command of his own sloop, a fast, agile vessel perfect for coastal raids. The turning point came in 1717. Off the coast of Martinique, Teach captured a massive French slave ship, La Concorde. He refitted it with 40 guns and renamed it Queen Anne's Revenge, a nod to the monarch he once served under. Now armed with real firepower, Blackbeard began to rule the Atlantic. But it wasn't just the cannons that made him terrifying, it was the theatrics. Before battle, he tied slow-burning fuses into his thick black beard so smoke poured from his face like a demon risen from hell. He wore black velvet, a wide-brimmed hat, and 6 loaded pistols strapped across his chest. To many, he wasn't just a pirate. He was death itself. The Caribbean and the American colonies offered Blackbeard chaos, riches, and weak defenses. It was the perfect hunting ground. By May of 1718, Blackbeard had become a name whispered in fear. That month, he made his boldest move yet. With 4 ships and over 300 men, he blockaded the port of Charleston, South Carolina, one of the richest cities in the New World. He brought the colony to its knees, but he didn't ask for gold or silver. He demanded something unexpected, a chest of medicine. The exact reason is still debated, but Blackbeard made it clear: no medicine, no mercy. For nearly a week, the city stalled. Humiliated, desperate, helpless. Then they surrendered. Blackbeard got what he wanted and vanished without firing a shot. It was piracy as theater, a display of control, not carnage. Even Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia admitted he spread greater fear than 1,000 men with swords. Later that year, Blackbeard surprised everyone. He appeared to retire, accepting a royal pardon from Governor Charles Eden of North Carolina. He settled in the sleepy coastal town of Bath, married a local woman, and blended into polite society. But it was all a front. Behind the scenes, Teach continued to raid ships, stash contraband, and funnel goods inland with Eden's silent approval. In exchange, the governor took a cut. It was a criminal alliance, pirates and politicians sharing profits, protected by legal gray zones and backroom deals. But not everyone was deceived. In Virginia, Governor Alexander Spotswood was watching. He saw Blackbeard not as a rogue pirate, but as a threat to legitimate commerce and British control in the colonies. To Spotswood, this wasn't retirement. It was organized crime, and he was ready to put an end to it. Governor Spotswood had a problem. He couldn't legally pursue Blackbeard into North Carolina, a separate colony under different leadership. So he broke the rules. He secretly commissioned Lieutenant Robert Maynard, a young British naval officer, and sent him, without authorization, into Carolina waters. It was a risky political gamble. If it failed, it could spark a crisis between colonies. Maynard, ambitious but inexperienced in pirate warfare, accepted without hesitation. With just 2 lightly armed sloops and 60 men, he set sail for Ocracoke Island, where Blackbeard was rumored to be anchored. The waters were shallow, treacherous, easy to defend, and perfect for an ambush. The trap was set, and Blackbeard was waiting. The sun had barely risen on November 22, 1718, when Maynard's forces closed in on Blackbeard's notorious ship, the Adventure. The sea roiled with tension as the 2 ships, locked in a deadly embrace, exchanged cannon fire in a ferocious barrage. Blackbeard, with his massive frame and fearsome reputation, stood unwavering at the helm, his crew poised to defend their pirate haven. But Maynard, clever and strategic, had a deadly trick up his sleeve. He kept most of his men hidden below deck, waiting for the right moment to strike. The moment came when Blackbeard's pirates boarded Maynard's ship, thinking victory was theirs. But as they stepped onto the deck, Maynard's men erupted from below, bursting from the hatch like demons unleashed. The pirates were caught in a deadly trap. Chaos reigned as steel clashed, gunfire rang out, and men screamed in agony. Blackbeard fought with the fury of a cornered beast. He took shots to the chest, his blood staining his clothes, yet he pressed forward, hacking through the mayhem. The battle raged on as he withstood unimaginable pain. 5 shots, over 20 stabs, but he never faltered. It wasn't until a fatal blow severed his head that the infamous pirate legend of Blackbeard came to a gruesome end. His lifeless body was tossed overboard, but not before his head was tied to the bowsprit as a grim trophy of victory. Maynard returned to Virginia with it, the head of Blackbeard paraded as proof of the end of one of the most feared pirates to ever sail the seas. The legend of Blackbeard was sealed, his violent death becoming a symbol of the brutal finality of pirate warfare. Blackbeard's death did not end piracy, but it marked the beginning of the end. Colonial governments, once tolerant of pirates when it suited them, now turned brutal. They wanted order, commerce, and above all, control. However, Blackbeard remained alive in rumor, ballad, and fear. Tales spread that he had buried treasure, that he was invincible, that his ghost haunted the Carolina coast, and some still believe it does. His power came not just from violence, but from psychological mastery. He built a persona so terrifying that most ships surrendered before a single shot was fired. Blackbeard's story is not just about piracy, it's about a man who understood the theater of power. In a world of empires, trade, and betrayal, he carved his name into history, not through wealth, but through fear. And though his reign was brief, his shadow has never truly faded, because long after his ship sank beneath the sea, the legend of Blackbeard sails on. Would you like to learn more? Check out our website and subscribe at archivinghistory.com.